Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a bit of an overview of who you are?
Hi guys, my name's Hamish. I am a swimmer or ex-swimmer. I now have gone to the other side and I'm doing a little bit of swim coaching. I know Renee through the swim club. We're at the same swim club. She's been here for a while. Been a bit of a good experience. I swam for over 10 years at a national level. Had the opportunity to make a couple of junior teams, race internationally, got to do some cool things, meet some really cool people. And then outside of that, I've sort of studied, finishing up my study now in economics and looking to move on into a non-swimming part of my life, I guess, and take the next step, which is a little bit scary in some ways.
Very scary. You have to go into the real world.
The real world, real job, 9 to 5, that whole thing. It's a little bit daunting.
Well, we'll go back to the beginning. How did you get into swimming?
How did I get into swimming? When I was very, very young, actually, I'll tell you a story from when I was, before I can remember. Mum always tells this one when people ask how I got into swimming. I was probably about 6 weeks old, and I was born over in Perth, and we had a string of like 10 hot days in a row, and my grandparents from New Zealand were over visiting. And Mum woke up one morning to me and my grandfather, who was slightly loose, to say the least, in the pool together, him at one end and me floating on my back at the other end, completely fine. So I was a bit of a water baby to start with, and then sort of did the whole swim lessons thing, all that sort of stuff as per usual. Wasn't overly great as a kid or anything like that. But then my sister sort of became quite a good swimmer, sort of made nationals at 13, 14. She's 3.5 years older than me. So I was like 10 at the time. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like maybe I'll do something like that. And played a lot of other sports as a kid. And then sort of as I hit high school, sort of had to choose and chose swimming. Undecided if it was the right decision or not, but I've enjoyed it a lot and got a lot out of it. So I definitely can't look back. And then, yeah, I guess from there, just naturally step after step after step, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think, or when do you sort of think, when you look back, when was the age or like the moment where you realized, hey, I'm kind of good at this. I want to stick at it and I want to do all these really cool things, or I want to take it further?
For me, it was probably 13, 14, around that age. I did nationals at 13, didn't race very well, hurt myself, fell over on pool deck and knocked myself out as I was walking over to my first race. So that was really good. And then sort of I had a really good season that year. So like off that, swam quite well, had a good short course. I think that was when I might have won my first states, that short course year. And then sort of in the space of 12 months, sort of dropped 15 seconds in a 2 fly, won a medal at nationals, like picked up a bronze. And I was kind of just like, went from like, oh, like swimming's cool to like, oh, like, A, I'm like actually quite good at it, and B, I enjoy it. So had a change of coach in that time period as well. The head coach of Surrey changed, which was a awesome change for me. Like I still have a really good relationship with that coach now. Like he's up in Queensland, Mike Sage. So we have quite a good relationship still. So I think he was a big factor in that. And probably why I ended up swimming for as long as what I did.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned before that you've been competing at a national level for quite some time and done a few international comps. Would you like to expand further on what those are and what those experiences were like?
Yeah, okay. I mean, nationals was always something that sort of after I hit probably 14, 15, it was always the goal of the year. Like it was always, you race fast at nationals, states was what it was. It would always take care of itself. And I was lucky enough that realistically, I never had to worry about the qualifying times for nationals, especially as I was coming through the age group in my main races. Obviously, I'd sort of try and get more times and all those sorts of things, but sort of like but especially butterfly, like 200 butterfly, 4 a.m. sort of could always just think about racing them well rather than like, oh, I need to go fast all the time in season. So that allowed me to do a bit of race practice, which was really good. I guess the two trips that stick with me over all these years was the first state teams I went on, which was the first ever team camp I went on. I was 14 years old, had no idea what was going on, very naive to the world, and just got took out under the wing by a couple of the older boys and like learnt a lot, sort of got to see the whole other side of swimming, and realized that like if you race well, you could actually do some really cool things. And state teams was always one of my favorite trips every year. So whenever year I could, until mum put her foot down when I was in year 12 and didn't let me go in my 4th year, which was a bit sad, but that's all right. I won't hate on her too much as a school teacher. And then the other one, which is a bit of a strange one, and I think I was lucky to go on like 2 big international trips. One was to China for a training camp at altitude. And this one sticks with me a lot. It was probably the 2.5 weeks of the hardest training I've ever done. At the time, my coach, good coach, a little crazy sometimes, like most coaches are, in all honesty. And we just worked so hard for 2.5 weeks. And afterwards we came back and we were so cooked. Like, I reckon we needed like 3 weeks to recover off the training camp. But I just feel like that experience to go essentially to a very non-westernized part of China and see something that I would not see normally. Like, you don't really get to go and see those sort of things. And we were shown around by the Chinese swim team a little bit. We're taken out for dinner. We did some really cool stuff with them. So it's just that sort of thing. And then the other one I was able to go on was a US trip, which was awesome. That was sort of a couple of years later. I'd been really injured going into it, so I wasn't overly fit, but we got to train with a bunch of Olympians out of Team Elite under Dave Marsh over in the US, which was awesome. Learned a lot there. We spent, I reckon, a week to 10 days training with them. And I reckon I learned more there than I have sometimes in a 12-month period. Just how they conducted themselves. And it was just a very different way of thinking to like sometimes the Australian way, because like a lot of countries that some of I've realized as I've got older have very different views on how swimming should be done. So taking bits and pieces from all learned. And I guess for me, I've always remembered the people from these trips and the people you meet and the things you do with the people rather than the swimming for the most part, which is a weird thing to say. Like, you go on a swim trip and you're like, oh, I remember these people, and like I still keep in touch with a couple of them. So yeah, the friendships you make and the places you get to see from swimming is pretty cool sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, like, swimming requires a lot of training. So the people that you swim with are basically family, or you see them more than your own family majority of the time. So that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. You mentioned that the camp was pretty hard. When you do get thrown a tough set, which happens more times than we would like, we know that it's for our best interest, but we also like in the moment, like, oh shit. How do you push through that? Like, what's sort of going through your head? Is like your first initial thing like, oh, this is so hard? Or is it like, oh, come on, like, keep pushing?
I always, whenever I get given a hard set, I always go, this is going to be hard. This sucks. And I know it, and that's fine. And for me, by doing that, it makes me then go, okay, but I enjoy this stuff. I enjoy what this stuff gets me in the end. So let's work out a way how to do it. And for me, I always like to break sets down into small manageable parts. That was how I always managed to do it. And it was go, okay, if you're doing 4 or 5 rounds of a set, and like realistically, maybe 2 rounds would be enough. And you've got 2 extra sets on the back end of it. You just have to go, okay, you just keep doing the best you can. And the 4th set could be really ugly. And it could be really ugly, and that's okay. And like, I think you have to understand, and this is something that I definitely understood as I got older, that failing is really okay in the sport. It is really okay to fail. And honestly, the more you fail, as long as you can get back up and keep going, it's fine. Like, no coach will ever well, no people in the sport will ever go, oh, you failed, you suck, like you're the worst. They just go, oh, you failed, but you've had such a go to put yourself in that position to fail. So I think that's a thing that sort of people kind of get worried about. They're like, oh, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. It's like, no one really cares if you fail. No one remembers. Nobody remembers it. Like, I don't remember the sets where I failed and like couldn't keep going. I remember, you know, there might be 5 sets that I look back on and go, I should have failed in this set, but I didn't for some reason. And those are the sets you remember. You don't remember the ones, oh, that Saturday morning when at the end of a huge 3 weeks of training and I couldn't swim properly. Like, nobody remembers that after a couple of weeks. It's like, whatever, who cares? And even those sets, like, you can still get stuff out of it. You just have to change your mindset. That was probably the other thing that I was lucky. I was told at a very young age by one of my training partners at the time. He was probably like 10 years older than me. I was probably like 13, 14. And he was, you know, getting on towards the end of his career, representing, you know, Australia open water for nationals and internationally in open water. So like, you have to be pretty tough to do that sort of stuff. And he's always like, you know, if a set's going poorly, it's fine. You can get something out of it. Take a step back and be like, what's something I can work on that might not be complete just physically? You need to get there. What's something technically? What can I think about? How can I? So, and I think also that's the other thing. If you take a step back and be like, how can I do something a little bit better? You forget about the pain a little bit. But like, yeah, I also enjoyed working hard for the most part. I mean, there was definitely sessions I didn't. And everyone's gonna, if anyone says that they enjoy working hard all the time, they're lying. It's as simple as that. No one does. But like, yeah, I was lucky. Like, I enjoyed working hard most of the time. I definitely know people that enjoy working hard more than me. And I definitely have met people that enjoy working hard less than me. But you have to find some pleasure in it, I think. And I was able to do that, which was, yeah, good, I guess.
Yeah, I think the enjoyment of working hard is the end result, and that euphoric feeling you get at the end, you're like, fuck yes, like I finished that set, like how good. But I love what you said about failing, because I don't think that gets spoken about nearly enough as it should. And I remember when I was reading the Campbell sisters book, and it's something that that Bronte said about, you know, there's no point like trying to like hold back to make sure that you hit everything right. You need to be able to push to that limit. And if you hit the limit and go over, well, at least you now know where the limit is. Like, if you never try, you're never going to know.
Yeah. Oh no, I think like a really interesting thing, and it's something that I don't know how to word this right. I think just like you see it as a byproduct of when you have young athletes come through and they do amazing things that nobody thought was possible for them to do. But a lot of the times when you're young, you're 15, you're 16, you're 17, you're naive to what you can do. So you're not scared of failing. You're like, oh, I can do anything. I can do anything. It's that extreme just confidence of naivety. It's like naive confidence. And like, you see, as athletes get older, sometimes they're like, oh, I can't do that because I know I haven't been able to do this before. And I've definitely been a product of that. As you know, sometimes I've got older and I've been, especially when it comes to racing for me, I was never too bad at training, but the racing side of it, I definitely struggled with like, oh, I could fail. And I remember the best races are the ones that you just no pressure on and you just have to go out and chase it. But yeah, failure is a big thing. And it has such a negative connotation to it. And I don't think it should, because I think most of the time when you fail is because you've taken a risk. And, you know, I think especially in sport and in training, taking risks is how you get to the top level and how you be the best that you can be as an athlete. If you don't take risks, you're just doing what everyone else does. And if you're doing what everyone else does, then you're just going to be as good as how everyone else does it. So yeah, risk is hugely important, and with risk comes failure. So yeah, that's how I view it. And it seems a little bit cut and dry sometimes. And I know I come across that way, and some of the kids I'm coaching at the moment have definitely told me it's not that easy. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but yeah, risk and failure go hand in hand. And I see them as a very positive thing personally. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I need to work on more. I'm terrible at it. Like I get paranoid before sets or races. I'm like, what if I fail? And my coach will be like, well, so what? Like there's still so many things you can take out of it. It's like either win or you learn. Like there's no sort of
Yeah,
like in between.
yeah. Um, yeah, learning from it is the huge thing. Like you can't just fail for no reason. You got to step back and then be like, all right, what did I learn? How can I be better next time? Those sorts of things. But yeah, it's a funny one, because like in some parts of our life, in education especially, like if you fail, it's a really negative thing, and like it might not be able to go and get the university degree you want to go into or get the job that you want to go into because you failed. But yeah, I feel like because of that, people then transfer it into their sport, and the failing in the two things are quite different. One's probably because you didn't work hard enough, and the other one's probably because you worked too hard. And so yeah, it's an interesting one, failure.
Yeah. Do you think that that's one of the only things, or what other things have you taken from swimming that you've been able to apply in other aspects of your life?
Oh, swimming has taught me so much. It's taught me relationships, how to deal with people, especially how to deal with people who you normally wouldn't be friends with. When a group comes together and you have to train with a bunch of people, you're not going to like everyone there. It's as simple as that. Like there's going to be personalities you wouldn't be friends with normally. And, if they're at school, you might only have to see them half an hour, or you might not see them, or you can just not be friends with them in other places of your life. And that's fine. But like colleagues and stuff like that. But at training, you see them 20 hours a week, bare minimum, and you see each other at your best and at your worst. There is nothing more obvious than like a Friday morning, you come in, everyone is tired, no one wants to be there, and you've got this hard set written on the board, and there's tears and there's scowls and people are snapping at each other. So I think being able to deal with that's something that I've definitely been able to take away. Creating relationships with people who I normally wouldn't sort of talk to or become friends with is a big one. And the other one that I sort of have taken for granted a lot of my life is my ability to manage time. I just like haven't realized how much time you can get in a day. And, because of swimming, like we start training at 5 and we get home at 7, let's say. It's a 14-hour day, and you can actually fit so much into a 14-hour day if you go the whole time. And it's just about, I've always been like, oh, like I can always get more done in a day. I can always get more done in a day. And definitely helps when you're trying to juggle a lot of things. And yeah, so I think those are probably the two biggest things that I've taken away from swimming. And the relationships one's important, because in life, relationships are really what it comes down to. You always remember the people. You do some cool things, but the people who you do those cool things with are why you remember stuff normally, in my opinion and experience, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say then have been the hardest times or the challenges and setbacks you sort of had to overcome in your swimming career?
So for me, I've had a shoulder injury that sort of I've had to manage probably since I was probably 16. Sometimes I go 12 months and I might have, half a dozen sessions that it affects me in, and that's it. And then other times I could have 6 months in a row straight where I haven't been able to do nearly a full session the whole time. So I think that's always been something I've had to manage. I got better at managing it when I was older, but unfortunately the shoulders were not quite as good as what they were when I was a kid. So even though I was managing them better, they were still quite grumpy with me. That was probably one. And then the other thing I probably noticed setback wise is like I was lucky, and I definitely don't take any of what I achieved in swimming for granted, especially now that I've finished up competitively racing. But I was always very close to making teams or winning at nationals and being able to do some extra cool things, I guess, instead of just the cool stuff, some extra cool things, and go on some really cool swim camps and stuff. And I guess being able to deal with coming so close, but still not getting what you've trained for a year or 2 years or the time period beforehand, and coming back and keep going, I guess, it was really hard. And like, I think to some degree, my naivety to it helped me a lot, especially when I was younger. I think I missed missing out on like a junior team like twice in a row by like 0.1 and 0.05 or something. So like two very, very close calls. And at the time, I was like, oh, this is disappointing. But I was just like, oh, I'll just come back next year and make the team then. And I was just naive to the fact of sort of how close I was to actually making some teams and doing some really cool things in that aspect. So yeah, I guess the shoulder injury is a big one. And then the other one, I guess is coming close to things you want to achieve. And I never sort of realized how much of a setback, I guess, some people would see it as, which I think is lucky. And I think that's just me being a very dumb teenage boy more than anything, which probably saved me. And I don't think many people would admit to that. But I think, yeah, being a dumb teenage boy probably saved me from a lot of heartache when I was younger. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, everyone takes it differently, but, as you said, naive, it can be a massive blessing. Injuries suck. And I'm going to be bold and say that as a swimmer, it's almost inevitable that you're going to be injured at some point. It's almost guaranteed that something is going to go wrong, whether it's something that lasts, 2 weeks that needs some rest, ongoing. It's going to happen at some point. How do you manage that? Because whilst it's a physical injury, the toll it takes on you mentally, like as you said, where you go a long stretch where a few months where you just can't get a full training session out. How do you deal with that? Because that sucks.
This is, yeah. As an athlete, I really struggled with it. And I never quite found a sweet spot for myself. So my last year swimming, I essentially injured my shoulders 4 months out from Olympic trials. I was probably swimming as fast as I had in a very long time. And I was sort of like, realistically, I look back on it and was I ever going to make the Olympic team? Probably not. But like, I had the goal of like making the final, maybe going top 5. That was sort of what I wanted. And I thought I was very much in the right place to do those sort of things. And then I got injured, and in all honesty, I really struggled off that. Sort of had to rely on friends outside of the sport was something that I really turned to, because they kind of give you a little bit of tough love sometimes, because they don't, and that's what I need personally. And I know not everyone needs that, because they don't get it. And sometimes you need to talk to people who actually don't understand what's going on. So that was probably like, as I was older, I kind of worked out how to manage it at least. So I didn't sort of really spiral. But as a kid, and I say as a kid, when I was like 15, 16 and first started dealing with this injury, I spent 12 weeks on a kickboard, something like that. And that was probably the toughest 3 months of training I've ever done mentally. Physically, it was what it was, your legs get tired, and your legs are tired every day, and so what, who cares? But mentally, it was really hard. And I realized in hindsight that it affected my relationships outside of the pool, especially with like friends at school and my parents. I was just kind of frustrated and didn't know how to deal with these things. And I was lucky. I went and spoke to someone, and sort of they gave me some strategies that sort of helped. It didn't solve the issues by any stretch of the imagination, but it helped. And I think a lot of it for me was taking a step back and realizing that swimming is part of many, many things that you do in life. Where you have this very short period of time realistically over your lifespan to be able to do it, and you need to enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, then why do you do it? Even if you are trying to achieve, lofty goals of winning, Olympic gold medals, or you just want to get your state time. You have to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, the goals get even harder and they get even further away. So I think that was kind of what I always tried to bring it back to, like trying to find enjoyment in it when I was injured. And it did help. But yeah, I think injuries is the hardest part of any sporting career, especially once you sort of get to a elite-ish level, sort of when you get past sort of like just doing it casually or socially, when you sort of start training a serious amount for any sport. Managing injuries and managing the emotional side of it off it is really tough. And then off that, managing expectations of performance, which is probably one of the harder ones, because you might injure yourself and you spend 3 months on a board at the end of 1 year, and then you have 3 or 4 months of proper training before you race at nationals. It's not going to be your best year, and you have to understand that, hey, you're probably going to be a little bit off, and but that's fine, and that's where you're at, and you just have to take a step back and be like, there's other things that I want to achieve in life. My friendships with my friends are super important, my parents are super important. And like schooling, education, work as you get older, all those sorts of things, they're all things that are super important, and they make up part of who you are. Like swimming is not who you are. And I think as a younger athlete, I was terrible at this. But as I got older, and probably this is what helped me get through last year, was I kind of realized swimming doesn't define who I am. I am a person first, and then swimming is something that I do. It's not, I'm a swimmer. It's not, I'm a person. Swimming is part of who I am. I guess that helped, but I don't think anything solves that issue. I don't think anything will ever solve this is really shit part of getting injured as an athlete. And I think maybe admitting to yourself that this is shit, and then trying to work it out how to still enjoy the fact that it is shit, I guess, is how I found to deal with it. But I know it's so individual when it comes to this sort of stuff. Everyone's very different. So yeah.
Well, I've spoken about my injury a few times on this podcast, and I worked out that the first sign of the injury is a bit over 3 years ago now. So it's been a long time. And whilst I've had surgery and I don't necessarily have any physical limitations, the flow on effect is still 100% there. And I didn't realize how much it was still there. So like, I'm allowed to race again. So I go to race and I'm like, I'm swimming so shit. Like, what the hell? Like, I've done this training. And so it's being reminded by my physio and my coach, like, if you go back, a bit over 6 months ago when you're in hospital, you were learning how to walk again, whilst everyone was at home doing their at-home activation and gym and running, walking, riding. You're learning how to walk. Yeah. Like, that's a very big difference. Your base is very different. It's going to be shit for some time before you build back up again. And it's definitely something that I'm having to remind myself of. And as you said, stripping things back, like, what's the goal? What's the focus? Are you enjoying it? And that's a process that I'm going through now. So 100%, like, it's massive.
Yeah, it is. And it's super hard. Like, and being able to do that is really hard as well. And people sometimes, I've spoken to people and they're like, oh yeah, like, this is how you do it. It's like, you've done it probably 5 to 10 times now. If you're an elite swimmer, I'm like, yeah, I get injured, I just have to step back. This is how I deal with it. And if you go through it for the first time, it's awful. The first time you go through it, because you have no experience, you have no idea how to manage those expectations. And even once you're physically 100%, sometimes you still favor the other side. If you have a shoulder injury, if you've hurt your right shoulder, you still favor your left. You don't pull properly on your right side because you're scared you're going to injure it again, and all those sorts of things. It's a huge mental battle. Like, it's a physical injury, but it's a real mental battle as well, coming back from an injury. So it's really tough. Yeah,
I remember, like, when I was sort of first getting back into swimming again post-surgery, and I was like, oh, I can't do that. It's like, well, why? It's like, well, that hurt my back before, so I can't do it. It's like, well, no, like like you can, your body will do it. It's just, I've been doing like 2.5 years of not doing something because it's painful, to then like, oh no, you can do it now. Like, it's fine. It's like, no, hang on, hold up a second.
Really
We can't go back yet.
You're like, oh, this should hurt. Oh, it doesn't hurt. There's an expectation for pain though.
You're just waiting.
Yeah, you just wait for it. Yeah, and then sometimes you make pain up in your head because you're like, there should be pain here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you think it hurts because, well, it used to hurt, so it must be hurting now.
Yeah.
It's just not there.
Mm.
Yeah. What would you say then has been one of your, how do I word it? I don't want to say biggest successes, but like achievements or highlights of your career?
Biggest highlights. Tough one, actually. I think for me, some of the biggest highlights I've had I guess one year I raced at nationals. I think I was 16. Yeah, it was 16 nationals, and it was in Adelaide, and it was just a highlight meet. As in general, those sort of that week was really good. Just enjoyed the week. We had a really good group. I think we came third overall, point score wise as a club. It was just like a really good like meet, and I enjoyed it. I raced well. That's probably a highlight. One of the other highlights I have is being able to swim for as long as I did and just enjoy the journey the whole way through. I see that as a huge highlight for myself, considering, over the past 10 years, I probably wanted to give it away and like seriously considered giving it away a couple of times. And so had to make some really tough decisions in life that was going to affect my swimming. And, I nearly moved to Queensland, and I've nearly changed clubs a couple of times. I've been at Surrey my whole life. Learned to swim here. Learned to swim and been there, swam for them for over, I don't want to say it, but I 21 years from when I learned to swim there until I stopped in the high performance group. So it's a long time. And I think that's another highlight, just sort of being able to enjoy that. And just, as weird as it sounds, like the highlights are the trips you go on and the people you hang out with. And I could sit here and talk about stories of stuff we got up to on trips that we should definitely not have got up to, and things we did that if our coaches and team managers knew at the time, we probably would have been put on a plane and sent home and stuff like that. And I shouldn't be mentioning these things because I'll probably get a lot of trouble from some people, but those are the highlights. And a lot of the highlights I have from swimming is not how I raced or how I swam. There's definitely races I look back on and go, oh, that was a really good race. I really enjoyed that. But if somebody like came like, what are your top 3 moments, of swimming and things related to swimming? The 16 years nationals on the last night, we hung out as a group. It was just a really good time. Like, we went to the beach like at night because we were staying there because it was in Adelaide, and it was just a really fun. And then probably like state teams, like all 3 years I went on state teams, had a lot of fun. And, a couple of the national training camps around those state teams, usually before or after, were always really good. Those are the highlights, when you just essentially get to hang out with your friends and enjoy yourself. And sometimes it's just a big holiday to go and race. And that's, I couldn't even tell you any of my races from 16 nationals. I just remember I raced well and I had fun with people, and that was it. Like, I don't think I could tell you a time. I think I picked up a medal that year. I think, I'm not 100% sure. But I remember the nationals very clearly, with like everything else around it. So I think, yeah, those are the highlights. Not always what happens in the pool, what happens around the pool for me.
Yeah. How important do you think, like you've touched on a few times about the relationships and the people and those sort of things. How important would you say is the social support that you get externally from swimming and even internally, like your squad as well?
I always lent on people outside of my squad for support that I needed at training. I found that if I lent on people within the squad, my baggage became their baggage and it kind of brought them down. I'm a big believer in when you're at training, you're there to make yourself better. But if you can make everyone else in your squad better, you'll naturally be better, because you have to be, because the standards get raised, the expectations get raised. And sometimes if you're having a really bad day and you see somebody else succeed, it feels like a bit like your success. Like, it is a team sport in some ways. But that being said, I have had some of my best training partners haven't been my friends. I realistically didn't really like them. In all honesty, there's been people over the years that I have not really enjoyed as people, but when we trained together, it was like, they're getting the best out of me, I'm getting the best out of them, and that's what it is. And sometimes that's what you need to do. And I think, so I think that's sort of like creating relationships that aren't always friendships is sometimes important, and being able to distinguish between the two. So I think it's super important. I think it's important in every part of life. Usually the better your relationships are in that part of life, the more you will enjoy it and be successful in it. Because if you want other people to succeed, you're usually going to learn and understand and develop your skill set better. And it's something that I'm trying to instill in the group that I'm coaching at the moment is, if the person next to you is getting better, you're getting better too. So help them get better. That's probably the biggest thing for me. And then my relationships outside of swimming, I was super lucky. Like, my parents were super supportive of me, really helpful. And they were very hands off as well. They allowed me to just come to them when I needed, and they would kind of leave me alone most of the time. And they knew that, I'd take care of it, and it was my sport. It was my swimming. It wasn't their thing. It was me, and I was there to enjoy it. And so mum and dad were pretty good with that. I have to thank them for that. And and then I had like a really supportive group of friends throughout high school and uni. I think that's the thing. Like, they didn't always understand like what was going on, and I guess I kind of always told them, like, you don't need to understand. I don't require you to know what I'm doing and what's going on. All I need you to just be like supportive of what I'm doing. And I think, it's a hard thing to do, to be supportive of things that you don't always understand, but sometimes you just have to go, like, whatever you need, just let me know and I'll be there and help out where needed. And my parents are really good at that. So I don't reckon they even knew what my times are at all. I don't even reckon, half the time I don't even know what if I was racing or not. Like, especially as I got older, like, they couldn't tell you. But always super supportive and always like, oh, how was your racing? And I was like, yeah, good. And they couldn't tell you if 240 for a 200 fly or 200 for a 200 fly was good. They probably like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Sure, good job. Like, and that worked for me, and I'm thankful that they allowed me to do that, I guess. So yeah.
It can be super grounding too sometimes, I think, when people don't understand it and you have to really strip it back, and then you say it out loud, you're like, oh, actually it's really not that big of a deal as what I thought it was in my head.
Yeah, it definitely is. And also, like, if you talk to people who aren't involved in swimming, and this is something I know that I'm very, very guilty of, you turn around and go, oh, like, I'm not really that good a swimmer, because you always compare yourself to essentially the best in the world when you get to an open national racing level, and your goal is to make open teams. Like, you're comparing yourself to some of the best people in the world, And then you take a step back and you like talk to friends who like can't swim. They're like, I can't even swim like 6 strokes of butterfly. And you're out here like whinging that you can't go a second quicker in a 200 butterfly. So it keeps everything in perspective a lot more as well.
100%.
You go for a swim with your friend, you're like, yeah, okay, this changes my opinion on what is good and what is not. And I know I'm very guilty of that because I know I'm very like, oh, like I wasn't that great a swimmer. You know, I did well in some things, but you know, I was lucky and you know, I had talent and had great coaches, and you know, I was very lucky in my swimming career. And then I'm like, but I wasn't that great an athlete. And then I turn around and go, sometimes you are very delusional about what's not good.
What was the transition like from retiring as a competitive athlete and then going into coaching?
It was a bit of a strange one, actually. So Jazz, my coach now, well, who I'm working with now, who was my coach at the time, asked probably like 2 or 3 months before I stopped swimming because I was like, I'm going to stop after trials this year. You know, I've been injured. I'm probably not going to make the team. And he was like, yeah, cool. And then he just like flippantly said, oh, would you consider coaching? And I was like, oh, like not really. Like I was planning on finishing study at the end of last year, but then COVID kind of mucked it around. So I've got another semester left, unfortunately. And then he like essentially would ask me, I reckon, every week or every couple of weeks if I wanted to coach. And I was like, and the answer went from a hard no to a maybe to, oh, okay, like what are the hours going to be like? And it wasn't something that I ever thought I'd get into at all. And I turned around to Jazz and I'm like, I'll come and do it if I'm there to facilitate. You know, I've got, you know, knowledge that I've been lucky enough to acquire over the past 10 years racing. And, you know, it'd be nice to pass some of it on and, you know, share experiences and technical skills and all those sorts of things. But I still feel a little bit impostery standing on the other side of the pool. Just like, I find it hard to sometimes articulate what I'm trying to get across and all those sorts of things because I was very field-based as an athlete. And for the swimmers out there, they probably know what that means. For everyone else, they're just like, you are insane. What is he talking about? And like sort of being able to convey that in words, I've struggled with a little bit, but I've got better at it. And it was good in some ways because I was like, I still feel like I'm swimming to some degree, like I'm passing on information, but I also sometimes look at them and I'm just like, like I wish I could still be doing that to some degree. But yeah, that is, you know, that is what it is. And I'm very happy with the decision I've made. And I've, over the past, I think it's like 9 months now, I haven't turned around and gone, oh, I want to get back in the pool. Like, I don't want to swim competitively again. I don't want to do it to that really elite level. Like I'm swimming a little bit casually by myself, which is nice. Bit of a rude shock when I swim 2.5K and I'm actually tired. You know, a bit of a rude shock when the body's like, yeah, no, you can't just get in and float 6K for fun anymore. Sorry. So yeah, but nah, it was a weird one. And I've learned a lot as a coach about swimming in general. Like Jazz has a lot of information in his head and the rest of the coaching team as well. Like I've all trying to learn a lot off them so I can, you know, upskill a little bit, even if I'm not going to hang around forever, you know, still want to be able to pass on the information that is available to me to others, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. You touched on before how, you know, you can be a little bit delusional in the sense of, you know, how good of an athlete you really are. On that, how would you define success? Have you achieved it?
Oh, so I would say no, I haven't achieved it. My sort of goal from like probably when I was probably 15 or 16, when I kind of sat down the first sort of after I'd realized I was good at it and enjoyed it, and then like, you know, a bit of time to sort of like settle in and work out what I wanted. I probably sat down and was like, the goal was always to make an open national team. and like either go to Worlds, Com Games, or the Olympics. Like that was always the goal. Like Olympics was gold standard, and Com Games and Worlds was sort of the next step down. But we're always going to be sort of like, yep, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve in the sport. And I was never able to represent Australia at an open level like that. So for me, that's success. I've had friends over the years that have defined success very differently, and they achieved it or didn't achieve it. But yeah, for me, that's what I define as success. And no, I didn't achieve it.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can almost challenge you on that in some form, because a lot of the things that you say you look back as highlights, and the enjoyment and those relationships and the people and all these other cool things that you have been able to do, that's still, in my point of view, in my opinion, is success.
Yeah. So I'd put it to you like this. The journey was successful, but the result was not.
Okay.
So, and they're two slightly different things. I think I definitely enjoyed the journey that I took, and I definitely have taken a lot out of the sport. And in all honesty, the sport's probably given me more than I've given it. But the end goal, which was always what it came back to and why I was still doing it, was because I wanted to make that open national team. So yeah, I guess if I didn't have that goal, would I have swum for as long as I did? Probably not, because that was still what was the driving force behind me getting up at 5 a.m., 5 times a week to come and swim 40K in a week, 50K in a week. I didn't just do it so I could, have good relationships and enjoy the little things. It was like, I did that because I wanted to achieve something. Like I could have, traveled the world with friends and, hopefully achieved a lot of those other relationships in different facets of my life instead, sort of thing. So I think swimming was a vessel, and the journey that I took on was good, but I didn't quite get to where I wanted to get to in terms of results.
Yeah. That's a pretty solid answer. I like that.
Yeah.
What would you say then? Like if you could see your younger self, or talk to your younger self, maybe at let's say 14, 15, when things sort of started to pick up and be a bit more serious, what would you say to that Hamish, knowing what you know now?
The biggest things I'd come back to are look after your shoulders. That's probably up there. Don't worry about failing is probably another one. And probably don't put too much pressure on yourself, and try and enjoy it a little bit more, and live, more like in the moment all the time. I definitely know when I was younger, and even sometimes when I was older, when I wasn't sort of in a mentally as good spot, I was always like looking 18 months into the future rather than like, what do I need to do today to get this done? So I think those probably would be the three things. Look after your shoulders, which I think hindsight will always be 2020 on. Don't be scared to fail, and enjoy a little bit more the moment that you are doing, and don't always look to the future about what could be. Enjoy what's going on now.
Yeah. Do you think little Hamish would be proud of what you've done in your swimming career?
I don't know. That's a really tough one. I think to some degree, no, because little Hamish would see success as making an open team, but bigger Hamish, as we were talking about, probably sees it a little bit more successful due to the journey that I went on, and was the things I was able to achieve. But I guess little Hamish definitely defines success very black and white, where it's a little bit grey when you get a little bit older.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now I like to do 3 questions. And the first one is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
Ooh. Ooh. I don't know. This is really throwing me a curveball. Most proud of about myself. I'm not sure, actually. It's something that I know I'm very, very bad at. probably something that I am proud of is, for the most part, how I've like tried to conduct myself around the pool. I know I haven't always been successful in how I've conducted myself and the things that I've done, but just sort of always trying to be a positive influence and, trying to get people to come on the journey with me rather than like just by myself. I'm in a car, no one else is allowed in it. Like a bit more of like a let's drive a bus and get everyone on board and sort of, that sort of thing. But I don't know. That's a really tough question. I don't probably do enough reflective stuff on what I'm proud of.
Yeah. If someone asked me that question, I'd be just as stumped. I wouldn't know what to say either. But I know I haven't been at the club as long as you have. I don't think anyone has been at the club as long as you have. But I can say, the time that I have been at the club, you have definitely been a positive influence on myself. And I know other people have appreciated your input too. So 100%.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. What is your favorite quote and or the best piece of advice that you've been given?
You didn't wake up to be mediocre, which I really liked. And it's just a really good way of looking at it. Like, when your alarm goes off at 4:30, so you're at the pool by 5, having that little snippet in the back of your head, you didn't wake up to be mediocre is kind of nice. It's like, yeah, okay, this is, why get up if you don't want to do something special, sort of thing is what it comes down to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think I've heard that one before. That's new. I like it.
It was said to me by a training partner when I was very young, in a very off the cuff conversation. And he doesn't even use it. I'm still friends with him now. And he's like, I barely even remember I said it, but it just stuck with me. I think I was like 13 or 14 at the time. And, he's been a huge influence on my life as an athlete, which was really nice. So yeah, there's one for you.
I like it. Do you have any tips or advice for those that are listening, or even someone that's sort of coming up through the sport of swimming or any other sport? What advice or tips would you give them?
I'll try and keep it very general. I won't go to swimming, so I don't lose half your audience here. I'd say probably like, and I've touched on both of them, and it's probably the advice I gave little Hamish to some degree. Don't be scared to fail. Like, it's really, really okay in sport to fail. It's usually how you learn, and it's usually how you grow and you become a better athlete. You hear the best athletes in the world, and none of them have had no failure or no setbacks or no anything. And, you hear some of the best in training, and they do some really good stuff, but they also do some awful sets. Like, I've seen some of the best trainers in the world, and I've seen them do sets that I would be disappointed with. It's because they were okay with failing, and they're like, yeah, I learned more from that than I ever did from being successful, is probably the thing. And enjoy what you're doing. Really enjoy what you're doing, especially when it comes to sport, because it's not something you have to do. You don't wake up in the morning and you go, oh, I have to go to training. If you want to stop, you can, and like, I don't want to turn around and tell you guys to stop if you're not enjoying it, but at least find something. If you have a goal and you're really struggling over like a couple of months, and you haven't been able to find much enjoyment, take a step back and find small things to enjoy in it again. If it's in any sport, find something that isn't overly important to the sport. And, whether if you're playing footy afterwards, go to the boundary line and try to kick some goals from weird positions, or do some trick shots, or whatever it is in any sport. And in swimming, it could be as simple as doing some dive work. Try and find a little bit of enjoyment out of it. And usually if you start enjoying a little part of it, it'll spread. It's kind of like COVID, once you start enjoying a small part of it, it starts to spread. That being said, it works both ways. If you start to not enjoy some things, it can spread as well. So just, yeah, it works both ways. So do be careful with that stuff. It's probably the two pieces of advice I have for anyone in any sport at any level, realistically. And be nice to yourself as well. You know, you only have one self, so be nice to them. They treat you well for the most part.
No, that's great advice. And I could honestly sit here for hours and pick your brain about so many different things, but maybe download part 2. Maybe.
Part 2, watch out. Yeah, it's interesting, and I've enjoyed this chat a lot, and thanks for having me, Renee. There's a lot of information in a lot of older athletes' brains, and if you are young and out there and trying to come through, most older athletes will sit down and have a 10-15 minute chat with you. Just ask them. They enjoy it, and most athletes absolutely love passing on some information because it makes them feel young again, and it makes them feel naive again, and it's actually really nice. That's ask lots of questions, and ask lots of questions to the right people, and you'll be successful with whatever you define as success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not too dissimilar in age, and there's so many things that I can learn from you, and there's things that I can learn from even younger athletes. The naive, or they'll put things back in perspective, and it's like, oh, yep, that's how I should think about it too.
Yeah, you get older and you start overthinking the small stuff, but that's all right. You're allowed to do that once you get older as an athlete. Yeah.
No, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing all the experiences that you have. And I'm sure there's many people out there listening that have learned something from this episode. So thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me. See you later.